Hi, Master Recyclers. My name is Dakota Tangredi, he, him. I work with the City of Portland on the garbage and recycling team, doing outreach and education within our team. And today I'll be refreshing you on how to recycle in Portland. So, how to recycle in Portland. So, I'll just hop right into it. So, when I talk to folks about recycling, I like to start with sort of some myth with reality. I think folks or master recyclers that are familiar, that have maybe gone out in community before when tabling or doing outreach, have maybe gotten this myth or this question. But there's a common and very understandable myth, which about recycling, which is, any item with the recycling sort of chasing arrow symbol should go in your bin. We know from taking the master recycler course that really there are no national guidelines or laws about whether something can be labeled as recyclable. Material can technically or may technically be recyclable, but not really realistically recyclable. I'll talk more about that. But that's why you should always follow Portland's local recycling guidelines. Look at your regional guidelines too, depending on what jurisdiction you're in. Some folks might also get this question. I know I get this question a lot when I'm out and about doing outreach. Why can some things be recycled and not others? In Portland, all the people within the recycling industry came together to decide what, could be recycled or what goes on our curbside recycling list. That ranges from the companies that pick up our garbage and recycling, the haulers, that also, goes to the companies that sort, the paper, plastic, metal, the material recovery facilities, and sell them to manufacturers, and the educators like us in local government who teach people about what should and should not be recycled in the blue bin. So rest assured, experts have come up with this list for good reason, and there are two main deciding factors that also contribute to why some things can be recycled and not others. So number one, is there a strong, steady market to buy the recycled materials? So really, we know that recycling, while it's a good thing to do, it's an industry, it's a business, right? So it has to be making economic sense for us to collect a material, right? So for example, when oil is cheap, like in this graphic here, we know oil is used to make plastics. It's cheaper for companies to use it to make plastic products than it is for them to make used or recycled plastic, right? When the cost of oil is low. So depending on the market fluctuation, we can't always rely on a material to have a steady market for people to actually want to buy it. If it's, a negative price, all of these items have floating different prices each day. Some material or commodities like cardboard tend to be really valuable because we use them for things like shipping and boxes. And it would be way too confusing to change what was allowed in recycling every time the market changes, right? So Portland only allows items that have a strong and steady market. So that's reason number one. Number two, can it be easily sorted, right? Or easily be sorted? So we know in Portland, this is a picture of a MRF. This is not a MRF within the city or region that I know of. It's way too clean. To be honest, MRFs tend to be pretty dirty, and that's pretty normal. But in Portland, MRFs are material recovery facilities. We collect paper, cardboard, metal, and plastic bottles. And we do that commingled, right? Of course, glass on the side. But this makes it easier for folks to participate in recycling because we're putting everything in one bin, commingled, right? But it also means that recyclables on the back end at MRFs have to be sorted. So all the paper can be sent to a paper mill after that. Metals can go to a metal recycling facility or smelter, etc. So while the sorting is done here in Oregon, in these big warehouses and MRFs, where both machines and people are actively working to remove items that aren't recyclable and then sort out the rest by those material types I mentioned, right? So can these materials be sorted is a huge consideration because some things really don't work well with our sorting system and our sorting technology, right? Things like small lids and caps or plastic bags, which get tangled up in the cogs of sorting machines and shut down the whole sorting system, right? So we know that, we could potentially collect some materials, but if they're not compatible with our machinery, that's going to make it really hard on the back end because they'll show up as contamination. So I have a quick 1.5-minute video. Folks may have seen this during the course. It really shows from the curb all the way to the material recovery facility what happens to your garbage, or sorry, excuse me, your recyclables. And I'm just going to go ahead and play it for you. The subtitles on.
So what happens when your material leaves your home? The truck comes and picks it up, mixes it with all your neighbors. They'll drive to a facility such as the one we have here, and the material will get weighed, and then it gets dumped on the tipping floor, and then we put it through our sort line. So once it gets to the sort line, we pre-sort it for any materials like plastic bags or textiles or things that shouldn't be in there that might jam up our machines. Then it goes to a sorting screen that takes out the large items. Typically, it's cardboard. It goes over that screen. The rest of the material will fall through. Then it goes to another set of sorting screens where it's sized down to 2D and 3D, meaning round containers or flat paper typically. The paper will go over the screen. The containers will fall through and go to a container sorting line, which they'll be hand-picked. Eddy currents and magnets are what we use to sort them. The other material that falls through this paper will go to another paper line. Once it's all sorted out into its base commodity, we'll then bale it up. So aluminum will go to an aluminum smelter, tin cans to a tin smelter, paper goes to paper mills, plastic goes to a wash and grind, and then goes back into other plastics. And that's the short story of where your recycling goes.
Great. So that was probably the quickest recycling video, at least regionally, you'll see. And hopefully that clarifies a little bit of what happens on the back end. So, recycle or not, folks might be familiar with this campaign, and that's what I'll be talking about today in terms of the tabling kit we use and materials we use, and using recycle or not, which was developed by Metro, our regional government, a few years ago to really highlight the contaminants, the top contaminants that are in our recycling, right? The stuff that really shouldn't be in there. And so they took a look at our residential curbside recycling and found what were the top contaminants, things like lids or plastic bags. And they try to, this campaign the city of Portland uses for Metro, tries to really bring some more clarity to the nuanced and really gray sort of system we have for recycling around recycling rules. Is it recyclable or not? And so you'll see me sort of use that language as I go through each material type for recycling. So I'll jump into that now, starting with metal. Right, so what we can recycle on the metal side is, aluminum or tin cans, your foil, pie tins, and empty paint cans. For paint cans, you want to make sure that paint dries and you chip it out, and then you can throw that in the garbage when it's solidified. For cans, generally you can leave the label on, and if you are able to, please keep the lid attached because it's more likely to get recycled that way, as opposed to if it's detached, the little metal lid. It can be read at MRFs as paper, sort of that 2D versus 3D point that Vinod had made in the video. So you can, drop a detached lid in your can and then, crimp the top so it doesn't fall out, or stomp on it or use pliers. You can also use that can to tuck away balled up clean aluminum foil. And then for aerosol cans in the picture there, you're going to want to throw away the circular cap, or not circular, but the cap that you get on those. And then has to be empty before you put it in your curbside bin. So spraying it, and you can spray it until nothing comes out, and that's how you know it's empty. Please don't try to remove the nozzle and hurt yourself. They have a mechanism for moving that down the line. The metal's pretty easy. Now we move on to paper. So on the yes list for paper is cardboard boxes, paper egg cartons. Make sure that those egg cartons don't have eggs or food particles on them. Milk cartons that are clean, rinsed, and dry. The cap is garbage for those. Junk mail, wrapping paper, and greeting cards. And for mail envelopes, you can include the little plastic window. They have a mechanism for skimming that off the top of paper pulping at mills, so that's totally fine to keep in. And same goes for the aseptic containers, things like broth or milk or juice, as pictured here. That plastic bit, the bottleneck can be removed, so you don't have to worry about removing that. For the or not, for paper, recycle or not. The no list, frozen food boxes, paper drink cups, like that single-use coffee cup, any food takeout boxes, and those boxes and single-use sort of um, food serviceware items, those are always garbage because they have wet strength in them. So, paper that's injected with a layer of plastic that's not separatable. And so that, of course, protects the container from really, really hot and really, really cold conditions, but it cannot be recycled. So it is garbage. That includes things like butter boxes. Butter has to be freezed at one point, so that is actually garbage as well. And same for food takeout. That wet strength, even if there's no food in it, it wasn't used, that wet strength makes it garbage, even though it seems to be made of paper a lot of times. Also on the no list for paper, plastic lined mailers like your, Amazon bubble mailers, and then any paper greeting cards with glitter or foil as well. So those greeting cards, that wrapping paper cannot have glitter or foil. And then paper napkins and towels, those a lot of times most likely have been made from recycled paper and the fibers are too short. So they've probably lived a good recycling life, but they're at this stage garbage. All right, moving on to plastic, the yes list, which we know plastics are very confusing. But here in the metro region and city of Portland, we use the shape and size to determine if a plastic is recyclable. We don't use the recycling symbol, right? That resin identification code or number. That's of no use to us. So the different shapes that we include in our yes list are bottles, jugs, round containers, and buckets. So for bottles and all the other containers included, the cap is garbage. And for bottles, the minimum size, same for round containers, is 6 ounces or larger. Again, the main rule that we talked about for paper as well, for plastics that's helpful is rinsed, clean, and dry. We want to make sure that, juice or shampoo or other things like that, doesn't get on our other recyclables when they go into a truck, even though there's like a little bit left in the bottom. So making sure your plastics are dry. Jugs, like milk jugs and detergent bottles, are fine as long as they're rinsed and dry. Your round containers, a lot of times dairy containers, take the lids off. Those are also great, starting at 6 ounces or larger, all the way up to 5-gallon buckets, like for, Home Depot bucket or this kitty litter bucket. They have a way to remove that metal handle there as well too, so you don't have to worry about that. But 5-gallon is the upper limit for those plastics, and making sure, again, clean, rinsed, and dried. No on the plastic list, the or not, any plastic that's not a bottle, bucket, jug, or tub. So a lot of times anything single use, like this single use plastic cup here, the lids, of course, are garbage. And then plastic bags, we know that those clog up our systems, like we talked about at MRFs. But there is a return to retail option for plastic bags. Some Safeways or Fred Meyers or grocery stores will have a film collection or film drop off at their entrances a lot of times. And so you can save up your plastic bags, your bread bags, toilet paper, sort of wrap, and put those in those receptacles. And so they'll recycle them into composite decking through Trex. And then, of course, no clamshell or the single-use takeaway plastic containers or rigid plastics. It's on the no list. And then glass. So, of course, we know glass is on the side. It's not in our commingle, but it's in that separate little Kirby 14-gallon bin. So only glass food and beverage bottles and jars are allowed. Remove the cap if they have a metal cap. You can put that in the commingled recycling. Again, if possible, tuck it away into your cans to make sure it gets recycled and not lost in the system. And really, glass should only go in the glass container. Make sure these are also rinsed and dry if possible. And you can leave labels on because they're melted down at such a high temperature. It goes away, it's incinerated when they go to recycle. But the no list, the or not for glass, is light bulbs, drinking glasses, and ceramics. So the reason we don't want this lower quality glass too is when you mix, food and beverage glass or food grade glass with these types of glasses. Glasses have a different melting temperature depending on the type. And so if you were to combine those two glasses when they're melted down, they'd create a really brittle and breakable product that wasn't great for use. So we just stick with food grade glass. And so these are garbage. And one note also on glass, if you have broken glass, like food grade glass you would normally recycle, please put it in the garbage for safety reasons. Workers are handling those glass bins. So if you have broken glass in your glass recycle bin, that could hurt people. So that just needs to be swept up and put in the garbage. But again, stuff that's whole containers is fine for food grade to go in. And then one note on bottle drop and bottle redemption. So soda, water, juice, tea, coffee, energy drinks, coconut water, and beer, any of these metal cans, plastic bottles, and glass bottles, those can be redeemed for 10 cents at bottle drop locations or the green or blue bag programs if you want to hold a fundraiser as a master recycler. Again, there's a school, community group, they're great options for this. And then one note on hazardous waste. So through the Oregon E-Cycles program, you'd never put TVs, cell phones, computers, or laptops in the garbage or recycling. You'll have to take them to a separate location. That also includes printers, keyboards, and mice. You can call Metro at 503-234-3000 for drop-off locations, but transfer stations like Metro Central and Metro South will take these items. Also places like Best Buy or Free Geek. Also Goodwill is more convenient. They're an Oregon E-Cycles collector, and you can bring up for free up to 7 items or 7 devices within that category. And then motor oil, that for curbside, you want to put it in a plastic jug where it's visible, that used oil, with a cap on it, and then let your hauler know that you're putting it out for that collection period. Lastly, I'll be talking about our new curbside program that is for residential. And I wanted to start off with some key points for the public as y'all are going out and educating on this new and exciting program. So the first point that is the most exciting, or not exciting, the most important, excuse me, around batteries is to never put batteries in trash or mixed recycling. So we know that battery-caused fires have increased by 40% across the country in recent years, and these fires endanger staff and can cause millions of dollars in damage. And of course, the fires are coming from improper disposal of batteries, and we'll talk about some of the most problematic battery types in future slides. This is just a quick video. There is no audio, but it shows some of the implications of batteries that end up in the sort lines at material recovery facilities at MRFs. This is in the UK. All right, point number 2, how to safely recycle batteries. So because this is a residential program, battery recycling is only going to be offered at a single family detached home, duplex, triplex, or fourplex. And so the basic process is that your batteries will be put in a Ziploc sealed bag, a 1-quart bag to be specific, nothing bigger. And those batteries will be put on top of your glass bin. And we'll talk more about that. In terms of multifamily and commercial, but more specifically for apartments, there are drop-off or mail-in options. So one good way to find some drop-off options would be use the Find a Recycler recycling database through Metro, calling the Metro recycling information line, or submitting a question to the Ask Metro email. Additionally, there are also mail-in options that property managers can pay for, but they are somewhat costly to send batteries that are collected from residential apartments for disposal to call to recycle locations. So in terms of the curbside program details, what's actually accepted? So in terms of household batteries, the rule is going to be if it fits in a 1 quart bag, it's allowed, right? So think your typical double A's, triple A's, alkalines, 9 volt, 12 volt, those button cell batteries, even batteries that are as large as tool batteries, they just need to be able to fit in a 1 quart bag. So that's the standard bag we're going to be using. You can also use a zip sealed sandwich bag, which is smaller, but you cannot use a gallon bag or bigger. So this is very important. What's not accepted is that the batteries that are not accepted are the ones that do not fit in a 1 quart bag, right? So if they're not fitting in that size of bag, they're not accepted in terms of size. We especially don't want vape pens or e-cigarettes because these batteries can turn on and heat up, which is one of the reasons that can lead to fires. We really don't want these to be put in the program, even though they are small enough. And that's where you would call the Metro Recycling Information Center for more information on disposal options near you. We also do not want damaged, corroded, or bulging batteries. You can call Metro for appropriate preparation instructions. That tends to be, in terms of preparation, a little bit different, where you're putting those bulging, corroded, or damaged batteries in a container with kitty litter or sand or something dry to make sure that it's hopefully not going to cause sparks or be separated from things, and calling Metro for your disposal options. Also, we're not taking items with embedded or built-in batteries. So things like cell phones, laptops, or tablets, devices where it's very hard to remove those batteries. Additionally, wireless headphones, Bluetooth speakers, fitness watches, electric toothbrushes, reading lights, really anything that makes noise, lights up, heats up, moves, and does not plug into a wall, has a battery, is an embedded one, and we're not taking those in this program. There are, however, alternative options. You can call the Metro Recycling Information Center about and see what's closest to you in terms of drop-off locations for those items. So how are we going to prep the batteries before we put them in plastic bags? So there's one slight distinction that's important when you're talking to people about different types of batteries. We're not talking in chemical types or chemistries for batteries. We really are using just this more common language. So alkaline versus things like rechargeable or lithium ion. If you can read on the battery that it says alkaline, please do not tape the alkaline batteries. This is a specific instruction from the material recovery facilities that are sorting these materials. They really want to make sure when they're sending them to a battery recycler, they're not taped. It's just one less headache in the process for folks that are actually recycling them. And I do want to make a point about battery recycling through the residential program. These batteries will be recycled into new products, a lot of times metal products or other batteries. The component parts will be recycled into through shredding and melting down of those components. In terms of what you would tape, you're using clear tape to tape all the other battery types, right? So you're taping the ends, the terminals, the plus and negative of those batteries. The reason being is that the culprits that tend to cause the most fires are rechargeable or lithium ion batteries, right? Even though alkalines tend to be more prevalent, the vast majority of fires are caused from these rechargeables and lithium ion. So the idea of taping both ends helps to make sure that when they're in a bag together, if they happen to touch, the batteries happen to touch, they don't spark or activate themselves and heat up and cause fires that way. So that's one way that also the MRFs and folks that are sorting the batteries at material recovery facilities before sending them to battery recyclers can see the type of battery. So that clear tape is really important so they can determine what type of battery it is. And if you do not know if it's an alkaline or rechargeable lithium ion, when in doubt, please do tape. It's okay to tape if you're unsure. Lastly, one of the last battery types on the far right, the button cell batteries, their taping method is a little bit different. And you're going to basically lay down a layer of tape sticky side up and put your button cell batteries flat on top of the tape, make sure that they're not touching, and then sandwich them with another layer of tape. And that's the way to sort of prepare those different batteries. And once again, this is the huge importance of taping. Really is about keeping fires from happening. They can get hot, they can activate when they're sparking or they're near each other. So really just want to reiterate that as a point of safety when you're communicating to the public. This is really a choice that, of course, we care about recycling batteries, but is a safety decision we've made in offering collection for sorting facilities and haulers and all the folks that are involved in recycling batteries. So main takeaways, we really want to make sure that we're putting these batteries, after we've taped them and prepared them, in zip sealed 1 quart or sandwich bags. Those are the only sizes accepted. It can't be in a loose bag like this. That zip seal is really to make sure that water does not get into the battery bags and that nothing leaches out, right? Knowing that we live in very rainy Oregon, very rainy Portland. And then once you've prepared your batteries, you're going to put them on top of your glass bin. If there's glass in the bin, you can set the bag on top of the glass. Please don't set it under the glass because haulers won't necessarily see it and drivers won't see it. We know that it probably won't fit perfectly flat on top of your glass. It might just sort of sit or sink a little bit. So long as it's more likely to be seen, that's why we want to put it on top. You can also additionally, even if you didn't have any glass to put out that week, you could put your batteries out in the bin. We've instructed haulers to be looking for batteries, especially in the beginning. And if they see a glass bin out at the curb, they will check it to see if there are also batteries in there. So really quick, I should actually go back, is that we also want to let you know that in terms of a limit of how many bags per week you can put out for pickup, we are limiting to 1 quart size zip sealed bag per week to ensure that the truck doesn't fill up too quickly. The separate compartment or sort of bucket that they're putting these separated batteries in is smaller on the separate glass trucks. So ensuring that only 1 bag is on the truck per week from residents helps to ensure everyone can recycle their batteries and they don't have to make an extra trip to a MRF during collection. You can let people know that if trucks miss collection or miss your batteries 1 week, they just need to hold on to them and they'll pick them up the next week to make sure that your batteries are collected. And I will let my colleague Genevieve talk about food waste next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve Joplin. I am part of the outreach and education team at the City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I am from Master Recycler Class 31. So I hope I get to work with you all on bringing the Eat Smart, Waste Less presentation out to community. We also have a tabling kit, and I'll feature some of those items as I'm talking through this presentation. We're going to talk about how to keep your food from becoming garbage and the program Eat Smart, Waste Less, which the City of Portland is using, as well as cities of Beaverton, Gresham, Clackamas County, and Washington County. I'll talk about why wasting food is such a problem and solutions for preventing it from happening. But first, I want to frame the conversation, some of the problems and solutions and actions we can take in a short video called A Love Letter to Food. It does go fast, but I will cover a lot of what is touched on.
Yes. It works.
Dear food. Dear food.
I know you already know this, but I need you. You bring my family together.
You sweeten my celebrations.
You make my deals.
You satisfy my senses.
And you keep me alive.
Trabaja muy duro para que sea posible.
Spending your life growing in the field,
The factory.
Or the sea.
I try to be good to you.
I give you half of my land.
2/3 of the water I consume,
1/10 of my energy.
And 1/6 of my workforce.
But I want to apologize.
Because after all that, you deserve to be eaten.
But instead, I throw away almost half of you. Enough calories to feed 150 million people.
From harvest to home, I waste half of all fruits, vegetables, seafood, and 1/3 of all grains.
I'm better at meat and dairy, wasting only 20%.
But this is a double waste, because essentially, I'm also dumping all the grain or grass the animals ate to make the muscle and milk.
And I waste you in many ways.
For example, sometimes I leave you in a field to die because it costs more to harvest you than you're worth.
Other times, I mistakenly damage, contaminate, or spill you.
Or I reject you when you're imperfect.
because I judge by appearance.
But mostly I squander you in supermarkets, restaurants, and homes.
When you are so close to being eaten.
I offer too much of you.
So I take too much, and I can't finish you.
Or I can't sell all of you before you go bad.
At home, I forget about you.
Or I cook too much, and I don't know how to store you.
Or maybe I just don't like leftovers.
Part of the problem is that, on average, I spend a smaller fraction of my household budget on you than in any other country or any time in history.
And my spending is spread out over days and weeks, so I don't notice the cost of wasting you.
But my lack of noticing adds up. I devote 4 California's worth of land
and more water than all non-agricultural consumption combined.
Just to grow food that doesn't get eaten.
This is not your fault. It's mine.
Only I can buy less of you and eat more of what I do buy.
Only I can accept your imperfections.
Realize that best before doesn't mean use by.
And store you better.
In general, I need to learn more about you.
Because this is about us and our relationship.
Yo te ayudo a crecer.
And then I eat you.
Anything else is a waste.
Okay. So that was kind of rough, and I get it. This is also a rough one to look at. So here's the pizza pie chart of showing that 40% of food that is made to be eaten is wasted in the US. So that's the equivalent to about half the recommended daily calories for one person. So in other words, 2 people throw away enough food to feed a third person. And this is particularly hard to hear when we know so many of the members of our community are dealing with food scarcity issues. So the video illustrated a lot of reasons why food waste is a problem. Let's spend a little more time looking at those. One of the most impactful problems with food waste is an economic one. And quite simply put, wasted food is wasted money. The average family of 4 loses $2,000 or wastes $2,000 a year on food that they bought and never ate. This is like going to the grocery store and purchasing 5 bags of groceries, dropping one in the parking lot and simply driving away. Across the country, we waste the equivalent of $165 billion on food every year. And I think everybody could figure out a better use for $2,000 than wasting food. Another impact of wasting food is environmental impacts. We waste, simply put, wasted food is wasted resources. So the water that's used to produce the food that's never eaten, the fossil fuels and oil for fertilizers, the grain to feed the animals, all the land and the labor to grow and make the food, all of these are environmental impacts. And when we consider that 1/4 of our fresh water in the US goes to produce food in California deserts. So where irrigation is pumped for miles, this seems particularly wasteful. Looking at the life cycle analysis of food, we can see much of the carbon emissions associated with our food take place during the production phase. So when we waste food, we're wasting a lot of energy. And as you can see in this graph, there's some foods are more impactful than others. This slide is a picture of our local, the local impact of wasted food. So this is a snapshot of our local carbon emissions in Multnomah County. About 14% of our carbon emissions comes from food. And I know that a lot of us consider carbon emissions with transportation, so driving around and the emissions associated with that, or heating and powering our homes. And this is just to share the importance of knowing that when we waste food, we're contributing to climate change as well. So let's take a closer look at some of the reasons why food waste happens. In the video, we talked about lots of waste associated with food, from farm to fork. All along that chain, we recognize that food waste happens. Some food is never harvested. Maybe it's thought to be too big or too small or cosmetically challenged. Some food is damaged during transportation and processing. And sometimes grocery stores throw away food past the date on the packaging. And of course, we waste a lot of food at home. Let's focus a minute on why we waste food at home. Some of these might look familiar to you. Sometimes we buy too much. Maybe we're hosting a party and we don't want to feel like a bad host if we didn't offer enough food. Or maybe we didn't like it or like it at the time we made it, so we have lots of leftovers. Maybe we have picky eaters at home. Maybe we brought home a meal from a restaurant that we didn't finish and we had every intention of eating those leftovers, but we lost track of them in the fridge or decided to eat something else. Maybe we bought specific foods for a recipe and didn't know what to do with the rest of them, or we're new to cooking and aren't familiar with cross-utilization of foods. Maybe we didn't store it properly or lost track of it in the fridge. The list can go on, and I'm sure you all can think of other ways as well. So how can we prevent food waste? As master recyclers, you all are very familiar with the waste hierarchy of reduce, reuse, recycle. And I also want to help share that it's important to prioritize actions that prevent and divert wasted food from disposal. It's most impactful to reduce food waste, then donate edible food, then compost, or ultimately garbage. There are many food rescue agencies in Portland who have created systems to capture edible food and quickly get it to community members through pantries and pop-up markets. Restaurants are encouraged to follow this hierarchy too and feed people before the compost bin. And to make a point on composting, having that as an option instead of sending food scraps to landfill is great. But in this slide, you can see the environmental impact of a problem from its creation to its disposal. Disposal is just this tiny, tiny portion of the impact of this item. The end-of-life carbon impacts is almost nothing compared to the carbon impacts of making, shipping, and cooking food. For all materials consumed in Oregon, end of life represents about 1.5% of greenhouse gas emissions. That's why it's so much better to prevent food from getting wasted and then compost whatever is left over. Things like potato peels or melon rinds. People often say, oh, I don't waste food because I compost. And again, we encourage you to compost. We do want you to participate in the composting program, but we really want only food scraps things that were never meant to be eaten in the first place to go into this. If you're composting leftovers, you're really not putting the food to the best use, and you're making really expensive compost. All right, now we're going to move on to some solutions for preventing food waste. And these are tips that are highlighted in the local Eat Smart, Waste Less campaign. The first strategy is called Shop with Meals in Mind, or Smart Shopping. Before you go to the store, make a list. There are apps like Cozy, that's represented here, to help you with that. And part of our outreach kits include shopping lists, both in English and Spanish, that help remind you to take a look at what you already have. So shop your freezer and your fridge to see what you already have that you don't need to buy. Using this list, I think, is a great idea to indicate for the upcoming week, where are there days that you know you're planning on eating out so that you're not overbuying and never get around to using those foods. I think it's also great to indicate a leftover night. So if you find that you have lots of leftovers, make a night to use those up so that you can consume them before they go bad. People who shop with a list end up spending without a list, excuse me. If you shop without a list, you're more likely to spend up to 40% more on impulse buys. And don't shop when you're hungry. Another thing that's going to impact your purchase habits. The next strategy with the Eat Smart, Waste Less campaign is prep now to eat later. So if you prep your ingredients when you come home from the grocery store or shortly after, it will make them easier to use because they'll be ready to be eaten or cooked with or frozen. Lots of folks do meal prep on one day to make healthy meals accessible throughout the week, and because we have busy lifestyles. There's a lot of really great prep ideas on social media. And just a tip here is use a clear container so you can see the contents. Use a grease marker or tape and a pen to make your own labels for using prepping your meals. The next strategy is smart storage, or keep it fresh longer. And this is about how to help keep your food fresher and last longer. And we've got a great handout in English and Spanish that we use in our tabling kits for this. There's a lot of great and massive amounts of information on how to store your food. The Eat Smart, Waste Less website has an A to Z storage guides that has lots of tips for storing and freezing produce. I've also heard great ideas in doing tabling that I'd love to share, such as putting fresh herbs in a glass of water like you would put flowers in to help them last longer. And not storing your milk on the refrigerator door because that's the warmest part of your fridge. So using the door for storing condiments. And then don't put bananas next to other fruits unless you want them to ripen quicker, because bananas give off ethylene and help make food ripen faster. Another thing is just remembering that your freezer works so well. I've had some great ideas. Remember those herbs that I mentioned? If you're only using them for one recipe, you can use ice cube trays with a little bit of oil and put your chopped up herbs in those. Put them in the freezer and then pop them out into a Ziploc baggie so that you could add them into sautés or other recipes when you're ready to use those. But that means you won't end up throwing away those herbs. I've also been pretty impressed at some food manufacturers who are starting to encourage using up excess food in these ice cube trays as well. So we got a container of broth to use for a recipe that called for 1 cup of broth. And so we had 3 cups remaining in this aseptic container. On the side of it, I was delighted to see that it said, have excess leftover broth, use ice cube trays to freeze them, and then make them available for your next next time you need it. So I think it's great that we're seeing more manufacturers get involved in those as well. Another thing that we have for keeping your food fresher longer is using the humidity drawer of your refrigerator. So we have, again, these are handouts in English and Spanish. There's humidity control in your fridge, both a high and low temperature. And it's important to know which ones like which. So these are a great resource as well. And additionally, we have a fruit and vegetable storage guide magnet. So these are popular resources that folks love to take home and apply to their household. So I encourage you to share those as well. The next tip seems silly, but eat what you buy. So we have the tip is to let people know where to go to use and consume something that's close to being past its prime. So if you've worked in a restaurant, you may be familiar with the first in, first out method, FIFO, but it helps use up food in a timely manner without things being perishable. So creating a space, eat this first in your kitchen so that people know where to go because, hey, this is getting close. So maybe leftovers get moved to that after a day. The other resource that we have for eating what you buy is the website foodhero.org. And this is a great program out of the Oregon State Extension Services Office. They have fantastic recipes that use up lots of ingredients. You can indicate what ingredients you have, and they have recipes that pull up using those ingredients. One pot meals, 30 minutes or less, kid-friendly, really, really fantastic recipes that I encourage you to check out. And I wanted to pause for a minute and just talk about date labeling because this is a section that folks get really confused about. So labels do not indicate that food isn't safe to eat. It's about quality. So, and none of these identify that food has gone bad or could be dangerous. We want to encourage you to use your senses if you aren't sure about food. Smell it, look at it, taste it. Most often, the food is still good and safe to eat. The exception of use by is for infant formula. So that is a use by date is an absolute safety date for infant formula. So, but that's the exception. We also would love for you to consider, again, using your freezer. So what I've been happy to see is on certain products, it says use or freeze by a date. So again, reminding you your freezer is there to really help you. And the last strategy is really about watching your food waste. What are you noticing that you always seem to be throwing out? Are you buying too much lettuce? Maybe that's the thing that you want to focus on is storing your lettuce properly so it doesn't get slimy and wilted. Households that measure wasted food are more motivated to reduce their food waste. So sometimes it might be taking a look at how much you're collecting over the course of a week. The average Oregon household throws away 6 pounds of food every week. So that seems like a lot, but maybe because we aren't seeing it spread over the course of a week, we're not seeing the impact of it. So in closing, I encourage you all to explore the Eat Smart Waste Less website for more tips and resources. Find solutions that work for you and share them. Let us know what you have learned so that we can all work together to prevent wasted food. Thanks so much.
And with that, I'm gonna end. And thank you so much for tuning in. These are our emails if you'd like to contact Genevieve or I around support for master recyclers. Or if you have questions, ideas on projects, and want to connect with us, especially as you're renting out kits. Thank you very much.